Nobody asked for Quibi. Nobody, that is, except for Jeffrey Katzenberg, the co-founder of DreamWorks Pictures and the famed Hollywood producer. Where a lot of other mobile video startups have failed, like Samsung's forgotten Milk Video, yeah, that really existed, and Verizon's Go90, Katzenberg figured he could really succeed by pouring money and a ton of talent into well-produced mobile shows. At this point, he's already raised $1.75 billion, and I wouldn't be surprised if that gets even higher over the next few years. At CES in January, Quibi also revealed its core technology, Turnstyle, which basically allows you to flip between portrait and landscape video modes on the fly, without any stuttering, depending on how you feel like watching your video. So if you're stuck on a subway or something and you don't have much room, you can watch it in portrait. If you want to spread out and see the full image, you can watch it in landscape. I was intrigued by the technology at the time, and I also talked with the company's chief product officer, Tom Comrade. He used to be the CTO at Pandora, and he was chief of product at Snapchat, so this is a guy who really understands mobile media consumption, right? He was excited by the whole project, and I'm sure he would be after spending years working on it, but it was really hard for me to judge until I got a look at some of the shows. And now after spending several days with the app, I can't say I'm very excited. Sure, Katzenberg and crew managed to create some quick bites of content. That's really what Quibi stands for. Imagine that. But I can't see how these are any more compelling than something on Netflix or Hulu. And honestly, the really slick production values of all these shows doesn't feel as intimate as the sort of DIY aesthetic you get from YouTube producers. So really, it doesn't fit anywhere in our current media landscape. Why exactly would you want to spend $5 a month for this stuff when you still have to deal with ads and you can't even watch this content on other screens? It's really all trapped on your phones. Even the 90-day free trial that Quibi is offering for the month of April doesn't seem that compelling, to be honest. At CES, Quibi CEO Meg Whitman told me that they're trying to be a third category of video consumption. So the sort of video you'd watch while commuting to work, and they're not really trying to compete with Netflix. But honestly, that is a really hard thing to sell today, especially when a lot of us are going to be trapped at home for several weeks, potentially even months. I also had a really hard time following her logic after watching several episodes of Dismantled, which is pretty wild. It's a cooking show hosted by Titus Burgess, and it basically stars some random chefs who are blindfolded, put in this container area, food is exploded on them, and they have to scrounge around the floors and walls and figure out what that food is and then cook it within the 5-minute episode. They actually have 30 minutes to cook it. It is kind of wild. It is like an over-accelerated version of Chopped matched with a wacky Japanese game show where they actually punish their contestants.
Are they okay?
I wasn't too entertained by it, I wasn't educated by it, and the guest judges just really seem to be there to have a good time. A lot of them just seem a little tipsy. I'm not really sold on this idea as a show. Honestly, it just feels kind of embarrassing for everybody involved. It feels more like a parody cooking show from 30 Rock instead of something you'd find on a legitimate network. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure some people will find it entertaining in a trashy TV way, but 5-minute episodes, that's not enough time to get the drama you really get with reality TV shows. And yeah, I'm just not really feeling the hook there. And I'll be honest, the entire endeavor of Dismantled and really Quibi itself feels like a massive waste of time and resources and talent while we're facing a global pandemic. In an era where people are losing their jobs and waiting hours in grocery store lines, all the while fighting and avoiding an invisible enemy, wasting food in a TV show like this just doesn't really feel right. And while watching this show and plenty of others, I didn't really actually find much value in Turnstile, actually flipping from vertical to portrait modes. It's cool, it works, it's pretty seamless like Quibi is saying, but portrait mode still felt really weird for me. Everything felt too constrained. It felt like I wasn't seeing enough of the action, even though the camera framing is actually pretty decent. The best way to still watch these shows is in landscape mode, because you get the full view of what you're seeing. Maybe I'm just an old, maybe that's just what I'm used to seeing, but to me that feels like the best way of communicating these shots. I think vertical video works really well for amateur footage, for when you're FaceTiming with your friends or you're watching an Instagram story or something. But for highly produced content, it just seems wrong. One other thing, Turnstile can also be used for interactivity. At CES, I saw a brief clip from one of the upcoming Quibi movies called Wireless, where in the landscape mode, I was able to see the scene as normal, but when I flipped to portrait, I was able to see exactly what that character was seeing on their phone screen. And that kind of reminds me of like DVD multi-angle scenarios, just really cool interactivity, maybe even a lot like some of the live-action video games we saw during the 90s. It's cool. Not many people are taking advantage of it at this point. Wireless is coming sometime later this year. We don't really know if any other creators are ever going to take advantage of this capability. And to be honest, it doesn't feel like something you can really bank a whole service around. I think Quibi's biggest flaw at the moment is that none of the content truly stands out compared to what you've got on Netflix and Hulu and YouTube. Let's take Chrissy's Court as one example. It's a decent riff on daytime court shows, but you know, those cases never really felt that great on Judge Judy and other things. It feels even more inconsequential here. It really just feels like the people who are appearing on the show just want to be on Quibi. They want to be in the same room as Chrissy Teigen. John Legend shows up for some reason. It's not funny enough to be entertaining on like an absurd level, and it just feels weird and very privileged too, because a lot of times Chrissy will just end up paying the legal fees for everybody. That's fine, I get it, not exactly entertaining. There's also Most Dangerous Game, which is one of the service's movies in chapters. It basically breaks up movies into like 6-7 minute chunks, and you just watch them a little bit at a time. It's a remake of the classic human hunting movie and book, except this time it stars Liam Hemsworth and scenery chewing Christoph Waltz, as usual, to be honest. And the show itself is fine. I find it really entertaining, but I'm not sure why I'm consuming this on such a small screen, and I want to see this narrative in a broader way. Being contained into 7-minute chunks just really isn't working for me. There's also Thanks a Million, which is a show where celebrities give away $100,000 to people who've had a positive impact on their lives. It's meant to be uplifting. I don't know. I just found it a little more cringeworthy rather than heartwarming.
Everyday acts of kindness connect us in surprising ways.
There are also a handful of documentaries and daily news shorts from outlets like the BBC, Telemundo, and even TMZ. But again, none of these felt like any different than content we already have available. I'm not quite sure what the use case here of just watching these things in quick chunks. You already can get news briefs on the radio, on podcasts, on YouTube, on your TV. The value of finding it on a really exclusive mobile app, not quite sure what's there. Quibi is launching with 50 shows and it plans to have 175 different things this year. And you can also look forward to some exclusive content from the likes of Guillermo del Toro and Steven Spielberg. To be honest, while those names are compelling, I'm not exactly excited to see some of my favorite filmmakers producing content that's going to be trapped on this platform on tiny screens. It just feels like a huge waste of time. And yes, let me be extra clear here. Quibi's shows are only viewable on mobile. I tried mirroring my iPhone to my Apple TV with AirPlay mirroring. It didn't work. The video is copy protected. There's no Chromecast support built in. I've talked to Quibi. They say right now they're focusing on mobile. Maybe eventually they can offer you some way to cast stuff to a bigger screen. And I think that would be really smart because some of this content is compelling. You do want to share it with people. I was trying to watch a couple episodes with my wife and we had to crowd around my phone. Meanwhile, our 55-inch TV just sat in front of us idle. This doesn't feel like the future of content at all, and if it is, I don't really want any part of it. And then there are the ads. For the $5 entry-level subscription, Quibi says you'll see a couple minutes of ads every hour. The problem is, since you're watching so much content, you'll see a lot of tiny ads. So I was trying to watch an episode of Dismantled. I sat through a 10-second commercial for that. And then when I tried to download that episode for offline viewing, it played another commercial, even though I already saw a commercial for that episode. It just felt like they were really nickel and diming me when it comes to my time. And really, it does feel odd to be paying for the privilege of watching ads. I know Hulu does this as well, but that doesn't make it any better. And honestly, Hulu has a much better library of content. You can pay $8 a month for the ad-free subscription, but at that point, you're better off just spending $1 more a month for Netflix and a much more robust library of content. Quibi is the worst sort of overfunded, faux innovative startup. It pretends to be changing the media industry, but it's not actually solving any problems for consumers or the landscape as a whole. What it comes down to really is that nobody needs Quibi. Not in the way you need your daily YouTube fix or need to catch up on your favorite Netflix show. And it could just be that nobody wants mobile-only video in general. You know, we do stare at our phones all day, but we also hop between devices, and we use our phones while watching stuff on TV to chat with our friends. And, you know, that's the entire point of the second screen wave that we've been seeing for the past decade. We're used to media adapting to us, and I really don't think anybody wants to see middling content that's trapped on the smallest screen that they have.